So welcome everybody who joined us here live today, and welcome everybody who's watching the recording of this. I saw a lot of first-timers joining. That's very nice. That community is growing, and it's a bit sad, but due to safety concerns, we are keeping these meetups online this year. I have a couple more meetups planned this year, and if anybody wants to give a presentation, please reach out and we'll schedule something. Before we begin, I'd also like to ask everybody to fill out feedback forms that you will receive after the event is over. It helps a lot to figure out what you guys want to see next, and then what you like and what we can improve later on. Okay, so we'll move to presentation soon. Just a reminder about Q&A. You can post questions at any time. I'll track them, and once presentation is over, we will do the Q&A. So I'm passing the microphone to Rokas, who will give a talk today. Rokas, feel free to take over.
Hello, everyone. So let me share my screen. Yeah. Okay, so we have a theme I want to present today about Go modules and their dependencies, especially about licenses. So you might be thinking, this guy, how's he related to Go modules and licenses? But he's actually, or the companies behind him and the teams behind him is the reason why we are here today and why I chose this theme. So back a month and a half ago, I saw this interesting headline that Trump is building a new social network called Truth, but after they presented the demo version of it, we instantly ran into licensing issues. So, and the story has evolved till now, and as you can see in the headlines, they've used a project which is open source but licensed under restrictive license, and they use this as proprietary software. In the end, we had to disclose it, and we're just sharing it as a gzip in their some of their webpage. I guess if you're more interested in the details, you'll easily find this in the press. So, and because of this, I wanted for everybody to understand how we got into this situation, and maybe educate and learn from this experience, so we would have an easier life and we wouldn't need to face any lawsuits in the future. So let's say you have an open source project, then it's quite simple. You won't be sued and so on. But if you are a business and earning money from it, having a risk of somebody open sourcing your proprietary code is a large one. So let's first understand why and how this happens. There are, as you can see in this slide, there are different kinds of open source licenses. We can put them in three buckets. The permissive ones, permissive, weakly protective, and protected licenses. So let's go through all of them, so everybody would get at least a shallow grasp of what we represent. So the permissive ones, I guess everybody is most familiar with those, and it's basically you can use them any way you want. Just you cannot sue the author, but you can base your proprietary software, modify the open source package, use it as a library, or sell it as your own product if you are maintaining it. And in Golang perspective, they are 85–90% GitHub open source projects are with permissive licenses. The next one is weakly protective licenses. So lesser GPL and Mozilla licenses here are shown as examples. What they mean, they have some restrictions, but they're quite very feasible to use in your projects without disclosing your proprietary code. So the main catch underneath them is you can use them as a library, but if you make any changes to software which is licensed under such license, you have to open source those changes. So let's say you have some library and you want to tweak something, so you can do that, but you have to disclose those tweaks for everybody to benefit from. And the last ones are protective licenses. GPL are the most famous. The Trump's organization got caught by AGPL, which is it's a GPL for web applications and for network for apps which are UI based. Basically, if you cannot, we are traceable, and if you use a software with this license with AGPL, you can get into trouble as TruthBot. So the protective, diving deeper into the protective realm, if you are basing your software on open source software with such licenses, you must open source your code as well. So let's say you have it as a dependency, it automatically has to, your code has automatically to inherit the same license to be compliant. And there are much more details into how this license interact. Some of them are compliant with each other, others are not. So I won't dive into these legal terms, but I'll show some resources where you can find more information if you're interested. So, and you're thinking right now, okay, it's nothing new. I know everything about it. Every dependency which I include in my Go modules file, I check its license in GitHub or other repository. It says Apache 2 or MIT, and I'm fine. But there are hidden things around that. It's fine if that module doesn't have any dependencies itself. So, but in most use case, in most real world examples, dependencies you use have their own dependency trees, and they are quite hard to track. For example, your project A is dependent on project B and C as libraries. You use their public methods in your code, but they are dependent on other projects, and those projects are dependent on other projects. And you can, in some cases, you can get very deep into this tree. And every project which is in the tree has its own license. So if you're not checking the license, the whole license tree, it means you're trusting the dependency authors that you're using, that they set their dependency right. They checked all the dependencies they have, and in short, you're trusting your business for you're putting the risk your business can get into in other people's hands, and you should be in charge, and you are the owner of your project, and you should understand the whole dependency tree you have in your application. So how could we mitigate these things? I'll show you a few examples. We were looking into this issue, and first of all, of course, we are trying to find some open source libraries which could help with that, or other tools, and we were selecting which of those could suit our use case best. After you have chosen a tool which would help you out, it will show you the results once, but your project is always constantly evolving, and you have to do it frequently. So if you will inherit this in your projects, keep in mind to run it in your CI/CD pipeline on every commit, or daily, or any other schedule which you find feasible. So okay, I'll share my terminal for now. Let's see. I'll zoom in a bit so you'll be able to see better. So I have a project here, which is our open source Kubernetes agent. I think this is a great example to show how you can not troubleshoot, but check things regarding licenses. So first, let's see the Go mod file. It's quite lean, not too many dependencies, and it looks quite simple. But once there is a command in Go mod called graph. This will print the whole dependency tree you have in the project. So you'll be able to see each dependency and why is it imported, like why is it needed in your project. And when you saw the project's Go mod file, it was like 10-15 lines, but when you check the graph, it's over 3,000 dependencies in one way or another. So you can get the picture how it expands. So it would be really hectic to check it manually, hold this dependency tree. And I'll show you one tool called Go Licenses. It's actually open source tool that it was initiated by Google, and it's I guess it's the single one open sourced with best implementation, but we'll see some of the drawbacks it has. So I haven't pre-installed it in my environment, and we'll run a command which will find the dependencies. I'm not sure why it's not working right now. Okay, I made a typo. Yeah. So let's wait a second and see what output it will bring us. It should come in every any second. Okay, first we see a lot of errors, but in the end, we see some good stuff as well. So when we were investigating possible options for us, which tool to use, it didn't have as many features as it does have now. It wasn't able to go through transitive dependencies we talked earlier quite well as it does now. And as you can see, there are a bunch of different packages, and I asked for CSV output so we can see different licenses that you have. So you could decide what licenses are you fine with, and like checking your CI/CD pipeline or any script if there are some unexpected things in the outcome. However, we got a bunch of errors here, and this is because this package is able just to check the licenses in the code which is located in the GitHub. So automatically we decided that we do not want to maintain this project or to add to create new functionality, and we will need not just license scanning, maybe vulnerability scanning and other nice features. So we looked away from it, and in a few moments I'll show you the tool we're using right now. But just before that, I promised you to show a resource where you can check different licenses and what do they mean, and to educate yourself about that. So there is a page which I like, and it gives quite nice descriptions, like in quick summaries in human readable form. You don't need to be a lawyer to understand that. Of course, you can read the full text, but it's time consuming, and for me personally, it brings headaches. But it summarizes the most the information you need most. And this example is the Fera GPL. The Truth social network got in trouble because of this. So you can see it's basically it's for websites, and a GPL is the GPL of the web. So you can, and you'll be able to check all other licenses like MPL and so on here as well. Okay, would like to make a disclosure that this is maintained by the company the tool I'll be presenting. It's not a commercial, but or any of its kind, just a tool I like. And let's see the FOSSA tool, the one which we use internally. So recently I've imported the same Kubernetes agent which I showed you in my terminal. You can see some vulnerabilities found. Check those. Were mostly because of the ones of all of them is because of the dependencies we have. So that's a good feature as well, but we are more interested about the dependencies. So here it shows that we have some issues, but once we dig deeper into those, we can get into the code, why it was flagged as a GPL, for example. And one of our dependencies is the Cobra library. If anybody built a CLI with Go, definitely knows what Cobra is. So it has a tool to generate a license for you. So it's just a false positive, and you can resolve those. So just an example, how you could mitigate the work you need to put in to get the benefits, but of course it's not free. Before this talk, I got some comments in the LinkedIn post that are about other commercial products for solving these issues. One of them is White Source. I haven't tried it or checked. So there are alternatives. You can evaluate which suits your needs best and choose that. Okay, but that's not all that I wanted to tell you. Then we started to incorporate FOSSA. It didn't actually fit in our development architecture that well. So we are using monorepo. Just a quick definition of what it is that we are having just a single Git repository with all our different services and libraries, and all those services have their own Go mod file, and they're like independent microservices. They might share some libraries and so on. So the problem we faced was that FOSSA wasn't able to process our Git repository and was timing out after a few hours. Of course, we have more than 3. It's in tens of microservices and libraries. So we were communicating with the vendor, but after all investigation, we just found the quick fix how to overcome this issue. So we wrote a short bash script which would go through every library or service and print the Go mod graph, which we saw earlier, and produce a JSON with those thousands of lines and send it directly to the SaaS service. And it works fine for us, and we are able to review all the flagged issues, and we're doing it on scheduled basis. And that's how we are dealing with this issue, and and we're safe of not being faced with legal matters. So for the summary, ignoring licensing as mistakes by other companies show can lead to serious legal action, and you might just need to open source your 2 years of work, which was meant to be our proprietary software, and your whole business is based on that. So think about that, then including any dependency. The second thing that I mentioned before, that it's your responsibility to understand those, to understand your own project and its dependency tree. And you won't be able to say that, okay, I used some open source library which is using some other dependency. It's not my fault, it's your fault. So that won't go in court, I guess. The third point about the open source tools, there are some, but it won't work for everybody. I already saw some issues posted in the Go licenses project for moving to version 2. The fixes that I presented you before, and there are a few others as well. And for paid tools, as usual with SaaS providers, everybody's shouting that their tool is perfect and so on, but usually it's just for the narrow use case they're developed, and to make it work perfectly, sometimes you need to add additional effort to glue all the right pieces. So thanks for listening. I hope that was informative. You found new things that you didn't know before, and maybe you'll follow the path to lessen the risk in your own projects. So maybe we can, Pranas, move to some questions if there are any.
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Rokas. I think this was actually very useful to a lot of us. Yeah, and I do have a couple questions. So you mentioned Cobra there, and what are some other very popular Go modules that are actually under restrictive licenses that we might be using? Like you probably started with, you found some issues in the code you had, and maybe you found these very common things that people mistakenly use in their products. So can you comment on that?
Yeah, I remember one package that we used was test containers or Go test containers, something like that we used in our unit test. Basically would spin up a Docker container like with Postgres or something in your unit test, and you can test your code with more integration, like with real service running. And it had some licensing issues. There were issue raised in their project, and the owner of their dependency agreed to open source a few files under less restrictive license, and we solved that. But yeah, we detected that with the system we had. And one thing to note, to add, it's not every file in a project can have his own license. So it's not only that the whole project has one license. Every file can have any license it wants. So you just have to be aware of that.
Cool. And another thing, and about the trust of the tool. So can you really trust the tool? Can you hook it up to your CI and pretty much forget it? Like, well, what are your practices? Do you do some manual steps on top of these tools? Yeah.
So we have, as I said, a scheduled CI job, which runs every morning, sends the report to the provider. And if there are some issues found, we get a notification and just go to their dashboard to check if we need to solve it by ourselves. Maybe some PR got merged with new dependency, and it's, and some unforeseen transient dependencies came into our code base, and we need to revert that. So we have a end-to-end pipeline, which is mostly automated, apart from that human critical step, which I showed you, that sometimes the tool says that it's under some restrictive license, but it may be just as an example to generate such license. So it comes in handy.
Right. And did you find these cases of invalid license where a project says it's on a very open license, but then its transient dependency has issues? Does that happen a lot?
That was the case. It's not a lot, because we are mindful when including the dependencies. You are not taking anything that fits the bill, but checking the checking the out for what respect or not respect, but visibility it has, how many projects it did, how widely it's used. The more the project is used, less likely you'll end up with issues because somebody else would have ended up with that before you. And the one example that I gave you, it's the one I remember, and it was solved by raising an issue on their project board and GitHub.
Okay, so to the people who are still listening, if you have any questions, feel free to post it. Yeah, for those who are watching the recording, just comment, and I bet Rokas will try to answer it offline. Yeah, but if there are no other questions, then thanks again to Rokas for presenting this to us. And again, a friendly reminder, please fill out that feedback form. It's very quick, just a few questions. Yeah, and thanks everybody for joining and listening.